Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Glasp Talk. Today we are very excited to have Shreya Khandra with us. And Shreya is a writer, content strategist, and visual thinker with a deep passion for the creator economy. And she has been recognized as a Quora Top Writer and a 5X Medium Top Writer, with her work published in Thrive Global Newsletter, the Startup Publication, and Silver Lining Journal. And beyond writing, she has experience in product management, content marketing, and design, and having worked with companies like Wow Labs and White Gold India. And today we will explore Shreya's journey, her insights on content creation, and her vision for the evolving creator economy. Thank you for joining us, Shreya, today.
Thank you for having me, guys. I'm really excited to be here and share my journey.
Thank you so much. So first of all, we love enjoying, reading your content, writings, but, and you have over 70,000 followers on Medium. But could you tell us, what topics do you focus on, write and share and so on to the audience who
Sure.
don't know you yet? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I uh, I started with self-development, that's how every writer starts. They start writing about productivity and all of that. But eventually, when I started dwelling into all these platforms, I realized that I am really passionate about the creator economy because the opportunities are endless. And I loved exploring these new platforms, all these strategies that creator use. So then I slowly niched down to creator economy and also started documenting the personal experiments that I was running in my life. So I do mostly creator economy, but I don't shy away from sharing the crazy stuff that I do in my life.
And you mentioned that, on LinkedIn posts, in 2 years ago, and you mentioned that, oh, here are top 15 article, in your article, and it's about, creator economy and so on. And but what content, the post was 2 years ago, but what content or articles are popular nowadays, and what your audience, are interested in? And so, could you tell us a little bit about, the current, situation?
Absolutely. When I started, the creator economy topics was pretty new for people, and there were only limited information that was available. So how to get started and how to find the right idea. So those were the topics that people were looking for. But from that point to this point, after 7 years and 8 years of writing, I've realized that the interest of our audience and readers have shifted from that mindset of scarcity to the mindset of abundance. Now people have so much information in a fingertip that they don't want to know more about, finding the right idea and all of these things. They want systems that can help them continue their creative process. So that was a really alarming observation that I noticed in my readership. So now people want to read something that I have actually used in my life and something that gives them a valuable solution, the hows, not the what's. It's all about the hows and why.
Yeah, that is, yeah, very useful and very helpful, And also, could you tell us about, a bit about your audience, where are they based in, who are they, what they do, and if you know your audience, group.
Yeah, I think most of my audience is based in India and the US. I have, l- see Medium and all Substack and YouTube wherever I create content. It's a great opportunity because the audience is global. So I have 2-3% and 5% here and there, but mostly it's India and US.
Nice. Thanks. And when you start writing content, why did you choose Medium? Or did you try other platform like Substack or other platforms at the time?
Yes, I in fact started writing on Quora, the question answer platform.
Mhm.
So Quora was really popular in India. So in fact, all the medium writers, the top medium writers who are from India, if you look at their writing journey, most of them started from Quora. And Quora gave us a platform where you did not feel like you were writing. It felt like you were talking to your friend and sending a long text to your friend who needs something from you. So then but Quora was not paying anything for writers. They did not have any partner program. And I, in fact, wrote around 1,400 or I think some 1,000 plus answers, and I did not make a single penny. So I realized, okay, now this is time for me to actually monetize my skill and, make a living out of it. And that's when I heard about Medium. And Medium was really popular back then. All the presidents and all the celebrities, they were using Medium for public statements. Like Obama still uses it even till today. So that's how I took that shift and I started writing on Medium. And then once you get deeper into the creator economy and writing, you realize that you need to have your own audience. You need to have an email list. So that's when I also started repurposing my blogs on Substack, because I realized that if I want to sell a book one day or maybe sell a product, I need email subscribers. So I also kind of started building on Substack, but I mainly focused on Medium because I loved the UI and it was really writers friendly when I joined.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And yeah, when I watched or looked into your Medium blog, so I think it's all like paywall content. So don't you think you want to make it publicly accessible for non-paid users?
I
Because
absolutely want to
you,
do that, yes.
you want to do that because like
Yeah.
yeah, Medium partnership program is great. So in terms of like earning money for creators, but so good idea should be spread, right? So how do you keep balancing between them? So yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. And in fact, that's why I moved to Substack, because I realized most of my readers who were students, coming from small villages in India, they
Yeah.
couldn't afford a Medium membership. So to help those readers and also to build my email list, Substack was a good platform because it wasn't monetized for me. I was just using it to give a bridge for my paid articles on Medium, so that's what I started doing it. And I really want to have my own website because I realize in this era you should not be gatekeeping anything, and every article that you write should be free. So I'm still working on it. Hopefully my website will be out someday.
Looking forward to it. And so if you publish or launch your website, so let us know.
and and also, I'm curious about, because I love, writing, but at the same time, I think one thing that stands out, your writing is illustration. I think visual illustration, visual informations, and that is very unique, but it is really easy to consume information, digest information. And I'm curious, where and how do you write those visual information? You know? Yeah.
Uh, when I started my writing journey, I only focused to writing. And trust me, I have 7 years of experience in designing. So I studied communication design in my undergraduate. And I was not using that skill for so long because I used to think to myself, you are a writer, you should just focus on words. But when you keep writing for years, you realize, no, you are telling a story. You are, sharing something, sharing a lesson with your readers. And you just don't need to focus on words. There are so many elements of communication that you need to use in your work, which will make sure that your idea reaches a wider audience. That's when I started implementing these visuals into my writing, and started making these checklists. And I even stopped using unsplash images, because if you go on Medium you would see that most of the writers, they just go to Google and pick up the first image they find. But for me, I thought about packaging my writing in such a way that it's not just words that make people stop and ruminate. I want my entire article to make them feel something, starting from the headline, the cover image, and you won't believe it. I wrote like a 2000 word blog on how to pick the right cover image for your blog, which is pretty important because the attention span is going down every day. So you need to ensure that if you're spending 5 hours in an article, it needs to be packaged well so that people are at least clicking on it and reading it till the end.
And do you use any like visual tools to create the visual information, like a Figma or Canva? Or I'm curious about, how do you? It's really, how to say, it's really great, and I'd love to know how do you do that? What tools do you use? Do you use
Thank you.
AI to create it, or do you handwrite, draw?
Yeah. I actually experimented with different softwares and different tools. So when I started, I was using Illustrator and Photoshop. So I used that, and then when AI was at the peak, I started using all these software to AI tools, image generation, and then everyone started using it. And then I realized, no, I want to create my own style, which nobody can copy. Then I started experimenting with different art forms and different designs. And I realized that I am more into minimal visual graphics, just like Visualize Value, Jack Butcher, if you guys are aware. He's pretty famous on Twitter. So I realized that I want minimal stuff so that it's easily understandable to the audience. And I I have that idea. I sometimes use Canva, and currently I am using Procreate, which I totally love. Yeah. So that's my current favorite. But you can use any tool. If you have the idea, you can literally use any tool to create a simple visuals.
Thank you. And since you mentioned, about the AI tools, and do you use, nowadays people are using ChatGPT, Anthropic Claude, and so many AI tools, large language models. Do you use any AI tools in your writing process or ideation process or 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 editing process and so on? Or is it all written by you and
It is all written by me, but sometimes when I have too many ideas, when I have want to streamline things, so I sometimes take my notes on ChatGPT and I want it to like streamline it for me or maybe edit it for me. Or sometimes, because when you are writing, you are so focused on the story that you sometimes miss out on certain words that you forgot to remove or a code that you need. So ChatGPT is more like my assistant. I don't depend on it, but I know that I have a tool that I can use to increase my efficiency. So I absolutely use it. But I also ensure that I'm not fully dependent on it because, you know, what I want to say, ChatGPT cannot say it in my language. So that's a fine difference between it.
But what do you think about the impact of AI? You don't use AI in your like writing much, but other writers, some people are using AI, and AI is generating a thousand of articles every day. And do you think is it threat to writers, or how, what do you how do you see the impact of AI in writing or creator economy space, if you have any thoughts?
When AI came out, I was pretty excited because creators need these tools to help them, navigate and make this process easier. And ChatGPT and other tools have really done that. But people stop, they don't understand that too much of AI is also not the solution. If you are not using your creativity and you're too much dependent on AI, that you don't understand that there are millions of others who are doing the same thing. So what is making you, keeping you apart from the rest of the world? If you really want to create a strong brand or a strong voice for yourself, then using AI is not the solution. I really feel that for ideation, for storytelling, you need to use your own voice, but to ensure that the process is seamless for you, then maybe for your processes you can use AI. So I think it totally depends on creators how they want to use it in their business or in their creative process. But I don't think it's a threat, because people who are creative, they know that AI cannot uh, compete with their creativity. So I'm pretty confident about that.
Do you use any AI tools? You mentioned ChatGPT, but so did you try, or do you use, Anthropic, Claude, or Gemini, or other like AI tools?
Yes, I used a couple. I used Gemini. I used Dali. I used Runaway also. And there are so many coming out. I don't remember the name, but I used the one where you could generate your headshots, the AI image generation. So I've used a couple of them, and they are pretty cool. I mean, they are the best resource for creators who can't afford a studio, right? You can, if you want to create, take a crazy shot and you don't have the budget to go to that location and shoot it as a new filmmaker, you can use AI to do that. But using AI to make an entire film, I don't think that's gonna work, because at the end of the day, we are creating for human beings. And if you don't have that human element in your content, it's not gonna reach to the right audience.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, totally agree.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
I'm
okay.
just curious, like, yeah, not sure if you have tried it out, but so what if AI generated content are published on Medium, so Medium can detect it and don't recommend to audience? Or have you ever heard of anything about it? AI
Yes,
generated content on Medium, yeah.
people are taking advantage of it. See, if you give someone a magic wand, they're gonna try everything they can do.
Mhm.
And that's what people are doing with AI. A lot of fake accounts have been coming up on Medium, and they are talking about writing and making money with AI. And it's even on YouTube, and everywhere you go, people are crazy about AI. But Medium is taking a strict stand behind AI content, and they have removed thousands of profiles from their
Yeah.
website to ensure that the content they are showcasing, it's from humans for humans. So they are pretty strict about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, as a platform, yes, and it should be fair. And at the same time, you have over 7,000 followers, right, on Medium. And I'm curious, how did your audience grow over time? Does one article go viral so that your audience grow, or is that a gradually your audience gradually grow? And
All the creators, they talk about how one blog took off and they got millions of followers, but it did not happen with me. It hasn't yet. I hope it happens someday. But for me, the growth was uh, pretty gradual, I was slowly growing. Initially, when I joined Medium, it was pretty fast because there were few people writing. And my writing, I always ensure that my ideas are unconventional and I'm not writing about what everybody else is writing about. So that kind of helped. But eventually, it, it, I mean, it's been growing on slowly, slowly, slowly. But sometimes when a writer picks up, that gives me 10 or 15 new followers, but it hasn't been once like a one night something. I mean, like a luck factor. It did not happen overnight. It's been years. Yeah.
yeah, people think, oh, it's overnight success, but it usually not. If you think it's same for startups too, right? OpenAI,
Yeah.
started 2014, but people think, oh, they went, they succeeded, recently. But usually same as great company, it takes time to
Yeah.
grow. And
Everything takes time. Yeah. If you're building something meaningful, it will take time because you need to know the market. You need to know if your audience likes it, and it's a long journey. And same startup writing, they are pretty similar.
but if you can go back, 7 years ago, or even 10 years ago, would you do something differently? Looking back at now, oh, I wish I had do XYZ, or different way, or would you do the same thing, over
I
time?
I think first, I am pretty grateful for this journey, and I've learned a lot. But I wouldn't change anything major. But I would tell myself to not stop YouTube, because YouTube, I used to do YouTube also, and I stopped because I thought I need to focus on my writing. When they say don't try to catch two rabbits at once, try to focus on one. So I think I would have loved to continue that, and I would have started with having a product, reverse engineering. Because when I started writing, I did not have anything to sell. So I looked at it as having my hobby, getting a platform to showcase my creativity. So I never looked at my writing as a business, But after 5, 6 years, I realized that I'm pretty good at it and people like reading my content. So I would have, taken different routes to ensure that I make my writing my full-time job, and maybe have a product and send that traffic to my business. Because right now, all my traffic is going to all these big tech companies. I have really nothing other than email lists. So I would have really changed that.
I see. Yeah, that that's what I heard from top creators, especially people get popular and famous. Oh, I should be independent. Have the audience
Yeah,
data and email list and so on. And yeah, and
absolutely.
yeah. So another topic about your writing process. So in your article, how I tricked my brain into writing, and you shared about the process how to write, collect, ideate, and create, polish, publish, these 5 steps. But that was written in 2023, right? So has your process changed, writing process changed over time, or do you still do the same process? And I'm curious about your, this step by step,
Uh,
process.
I think in a nutshell, I follow that process, but I also have different situations. So if I'm traveling, I will not have that much time to, give on a piece. Then I would tweak that process and ensure that my end goal is getting satisfied. Like if I want to publish something fast, then maybe I will not go through every step, but I try to do everything, because if you have a system and if you follow that system, it's very easy for you to be consistent. That's why I'm taking notes everywhere. I have a small pocket diary which I keep with me all the time. I'm taking notes on my phone all the time, because when you have a system that is helping you keep that habit to stay consistent, it's easier for you to publish more, and it's easier for you to uh, not fall behind the fear of publishing or inconsistency. So that's how I kind of tweak it according to my requirements.
I see. And what tools do you use? You said, like, do you use Notepad or iPhone, but do you use any application software, or I think you have tried many
I
applications, right,
have
over
tried,
time, I
I
think.
try
Yeah.
literally everything. I mean, I start my day with a morning journal. So uh, sometimes write my ideas during that, first entry I do in the morning. So which is basically my notebook. I don't have it here, but it's a normal notebook. So I just use that. And then I have Google Sheets. I love Google Sheets because I can use it on my iPad, my laptop, my phone. So I use that. And then Apple Notes is the best thing. I mean, you don't even have to download Notion or any other thing. And you just, because initially I used to use Notion, and I made my process this glorified process of using so many tools and whatnot. And I realized the simple your process is, the simple your system is, the more time and effort you can focus on the main product, which is writing or my drawings or videos. So that's why I keep these process pretty simple, so that my energy is not getting diverted or not getting wasted.
Yep, totally.
Yes.
Yep. And at the same time, when you when you write something and when you edit something, and since writing is an infinite process, you can edit forever, right? Oh, this doesn't sound good, and okay, revise, and edit over time. So, but how do you decide? Oh, okay, this is the time to publish. Do you have some certain criteria or rule in yourself?
I really love this question because, I have had too many opportunities to work for companies as a writer. And I realize that I'm not a person who wants to change every word and, not have that creative freedom. So when I am writing a blog or an article that I am not submitting to a big publication, let's say startup or publishers or any other big publication on Medium, then I set myself free. I give myself the freedom to write whatever I want to write. And sometimes when I get an idea, I these ideas they come with a proper article in my head. So I don't have to spend too much time on it. But when I'm doing it for any external parties, like a publication or maybe a magazine, then you have to spend a lot of time, and then you have to follow the feedback and change it multiple times. So I tried these two methods to create a healthy balance between creative freedom and also having to know how to take feedback and implement into your writing. So that's how I create the balance.
I see. At the same time, I'm curious, since you were a designer, right? So, and designers gets better through design critiques. That's what I understand. Meaning, having the critique session and getting feedback from other designers, and then they improve and brush up their skill set, and that brings, that becomes the experience, right? And as a writer, I'm curious, how do you think is best way to brush up or improve their writing skill or as a writer overall? Because if you don't have editor, and usually individual writers don't have editors, right? And but in that
Yes.
case, meaning in case of design, they have design critics, but writers don't. But audience can give them feedback. But how do you think, or what
Absolutely.
do you think the best way for writers to improve?
I actually been wanting to hire an editor for myself, because sometimes when you spend 10 hours on an article, you tend to forget you tend to forget what you wanted to write. You're just so engrossed that you cannot see beyond that. So having an external pair of eyes really helps, because sometimes you are reading something, you're just reading what's in your head and you're not really focused on what you've written. So I've been trying to do that. But also, if you don't have an editor, then you have the community. You've spent so much time creating a blog, writing so many articles, and you already have a community. And when you write something good, you get good feedback. You People tell you if they liked it. And sometimes I also have like a community of writers, my friends who are writers, and most of them are not, they don't read everything that I write. But sometimes when I need feedback, I can reach out to them and ask them, hey, can you share what you think about this piece? And having that network who can, support you and show you that, okay, you can improve here, and take that feedback with an open heart, that really makes a lot of difference, because sometimes we are so busy, we tend to ignore our own work, and we don't know if we are doing it correct or not. So having that network really helps in improving.
I see. And in case of Medium, Medium has a highlighting function, right? In native on Medium highlighting function. And I remember people can see what is the top highlights, you can see comments and so on. Do you think
Yeah.
those feature help you understand what your audience resonate with, or as a feedback and so on?
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes, whenever I am writing an article and I want to add a line, but I feel that it's too stupid, or it's dumb, or it's too vile. But sometimes I add it just to see how my audience reacts, how my readers, how my readers react to it. And most of the time, the line that I feel very conscious about, that's the one that my readers love, because that's something that you are sharing, like that's something that has no filters and it's coming straight from your heart. So readers tend to like that. They don't want to read AI, because AI can't understand human emotions, but I can, and I can use that in my writing.
That's really interesting. Yeah. And do you I'm curious, since Medium has top highlights, that reminded me of, do you care about the top highlights from the user? Or I'm just curious. Or you don't.
Sometimes I do, Yeah, I mean, there was a piece that I spent a lot of time writing, and then I went back and see how the audience accepted it. And that time I really did care about that. But you also need to ensure that you're not caring too much, because if you start caring too much about your readers, then you are stuck in that loop, and you're doing it for external validation. And I really feel when you are in a creative field, you need to stop doing it for the external validation. You need to do it for you. You need to do it for your creative energy to go out and, do that for your story to be heard by millions of people. That's very important.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And this is what Kay and I often talk about. But there's so many great ideas or insights, in people's writings. But when we, how to say, apply it to our daily life, daily work, it's really hard. And what do you think, what's the best way for leaders to apply? Okay, you share about, in case of, how I tricked my brain into writing, and how can people apply your learning or insights into their daily life or work? Do you have some tips or advice on this?
Uh, I've been thinking about this one idea since the last 6 months. It's like how you do one thing is how you do everything. And that has been really stuck in my mind. And I want to write a long piece on it, because I really feel how you write is how you live your life, and how you live your life is how you write. And it's a very beautiful way of understanding that creativity does not just stick to your writing. It is how you live your life, and the processes that you use in your writing, like how I wrote about how I tricked my brain to write. I have also tricked my brain to work out every day. I've also tricked my brain to talk confidently, how to, I've tricked my brain to eat healthy. So I do all these things, all these experiments, and I think if you really want to do something, you find a way. And I think for me, it is just playing these psychological tricks with myself, so that I am doing, reaching my goal and finishing a task that I have in hand.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. And sometimes people care about perfectionist, perfection, and then some people are tired of perfection. But yeah, I totally resonate with that, and yeah, interesting. Yeah.
And you mentioned that you spend like around 10 hours to 10 hours to write one article sometimes. But how much time do you spend so on average so to publish one article?
That's a very good question, and it kind of depends on the article. It depends on the idea. So the article that I'm talking about was uh, about habits that help me live as an expat, like self-learned habits that help me live a good life as an expat, something like that. And that required a lot of thinking, because it wasn't just about writing. You also need to provide the right examples. You need to share relevant anecdotes and relevant quotes and all of that. So that took a lot of time. But sometimes your idea is simple. You just want to share, a small like a small story or something like that. So it totally depends on the idea, because sometimes the idea needs 3 hours, like a movie, but sometimes it just needs 30 seconds, like a TikTok. So you need to know, is it a YouTube idea? Is it a 3 hour idea, or is it a 30-second idea? So for me as a writer, I need to decide if it's a 40-minute idea or if it's a 10-hour idea. That's really important because I can't spend 10 hours on every article.
Mhm. That makes sense. Yeah, depending on the category or articles you write, so you can choose how much you can spend,
How
I
much?
think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see. And so I think you are writing a lot of articles on publications on Medium, such as like Illuminations or startup or change your mind, change your life. So many publication on Medium, right? So how can you publish those articles on those publications? So do they reach out to you and so request you to write article, or you just like reach out to them so to publish?
Okay. It's a simple process. So you have to send a request to be a writer on that platform.
Mm,
So once they have accepted your profile, then once you have written a piece, then you submit it for the editors to go through it. And
mm,
if they think
okay.
that your article is relevant for their platform and if it's good enough to be published under their publication, then they give it a green flag. So you need to become a part of that publication and then you can submit it directly to the editors.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I thought it's a more like complicated process, but it's just simple.
It's pretty simple, yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Mm,
once you join that join that publication, then it becomes pretty easy.
And I'm curious about there are many, popular content in your writings and you pin some articles in Medium, but I'm curious, do you have some article or writings that's your favorite, but underrated, from your audience or unpopular from your audience? Or I mean, you wish
mhm.
you more audience or readers read.
Plenty of them, plenty of them. You won't believe the articles that I'm most excited about. Sometimes they tank because most of the people they want to improve their life, make money, but the real depth, the real core messages, something that I write from my heart and soul. Most of the people don't understand it. So, but it's not on them because people are on different journeys and sometimes they are not in that headspace to understand. I'll give you an example. One of the articles that I wrote was you don't need to be successful by 30, because I wanted to be on the Forbes cover and I was
Yeah.
working too hard in my 20s because I wanted to achieve a lot of things. And I realized that, when I did the first principle exercise, why, I realized I wanted to do it because that's how our media has taught us. That's how what we've seen on TV and in movies. And that wasn't something that I wanted. And luckily, I understood it understood it before it was too late. Otherwise, I would still be a workaholic. So some of these pieces are very close to my heart, and they don't get they don't get the traffic they deserve, but that's okay. I'm just happy that I got to write them.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, people are on different journey, and I totally agree with that. And at the same time, this is a little bit philosophical question, but what is writing for you?
For me, writing is actually putting something that's in my mind onto a piece of paper. Seriously, that's exactly how I started writing. I was 12 years old when I started journaling, and I would cut David Beckham's pictures from newspaper and stick it in my journal. And then eventually I started scribbling and writing. And as an overthinker, as a curious person, I have so many questions in my mind. I am constantly thinking about one thing, going into another rabbit hole after another. And for me, writing is taking out that data from here and to the paper or on the screen for for me to have a place where I document these ideas, and also because I want to share, some of these things, because we don't get the time to think about the real issues, the real emotions of life. And I want to share these things which people are too shy to think about or share about. So that I think that what makes me write, because words have power, and I think if my words help someone in their bad times, or even to help them in their greater journey, I think that's why I write. Yeah.
This is also a difficult question or philosophical question, but so how how can like platform or writers publish or read the great content, really great content to readers that need it? Because so nowadays people publish sugar bite content on Twitter or social media, which is not valuable in short term. Then but people love it. Then so at the same time, so like evergreen great content are not visible or not searchable for appropriate readers or like or audience. This is pretty difficult question, but so what platform or like writers should do so to address it?
I really think that technology has given us immense power, but it has taken our ability to read for more than 5 minutes. There are people who hardly read anyways. TikTok and Instagram Reels, they've spoiled our attention span, and people are these days we don't even Google things. We go on YouTube. We are like, okay, I'm gonna watch a short and I'm gonna find the answer. We don't have that will to learn, to read. Changing that, I don't know how we're gonna change that. And the only thing that I, as a creator, as a writer, can do is to share compelling stories, share, a glimpse of my life and my journey, so that people who follow me, who stumble upon it, they have a desire to read. So now what you're talking about is creating that desire in someone else, which is definitely not in our control. But what we can do is create something so extraordinary, that people are dying to read it. But it's a long journey. I am still, in the middle of my writing journey. I haven't really made it as I'd like to do in the future. So I am working on it, and I hope people also understand that we really need to spend more time on reading and understanding ourselves and less time on social media.
Yeah. And yeah, you mentioned that, our, people's attention span is getting lower and lower because of the social media. But at the same time, I realize that, then people read less, and that's what some media or some people say. At the same time, people are texting, I think. In that sense, people are reading text. Yeah, chatting, texting over time, 30 minutes, 1 hour. In that sense, people can read if it's interesting, as you mentioned, if they have desire. And I think
They will.
that has something and we can address. Yeah, sorry, this is my random thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, people are reading. Some people still reading, huge books. So there are a large group of people who are reading, but much larger who aren't reading. So that's something that's a bigger problem to solve.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, thank you. So yeah, since time is running up, so two more questions, and one is advice. And since our audience are aspiring writers, newsletter writers, bloggers, and content creators, do you have some advice to those people who wanna be like you?
I think the biggest advice I have is let go of perfection. The one thing that has stood in between where I am and where I want to be is perfection. Most of the time we don't understand it, but the perfection is nothing but our ego. It is stopping us from taking action, from publishing a blog, from publishing a video. You don't need to be perfect. If people need perfection, they can find an AI robot doing that. People need to see real human beings who are failing, who are making mistakes, and you need to be that human. You don't need to be perfect. So let go of perfection and just publish it, because you will never be this young again. And trends are gonna change, new things will come, and the idea that you are sitting on now will be too old to share. So do it while you have time.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great advice. And this is the last question. Since Grasp is a platform where people can share what they are reading, learning as the digital legacy, and we want to ask you this question. So what legacy or impact do you want to leave behind for future generations?
I think self-doubt is one thing that most of the creative people face. It's not the world that is against you, it's you yourself, your own mind, your negative thinking. So when any creator or writer, when they are in that position where they're doubting themselves, I want them to, maybe look at my content, and I want to leave a legacy in such a way that people trust themselves because they have read my work or they remember my words. And I want people to be their best self, being their most creative selves. And that's what I want to be remembered for. And that's what I want to leave behind. And that's why I, don't even care about monetization and all, because I know that if my ideas are good, if I'm helping someone, then everything else will come. So I want to ensure that the future generation is creating more and being more than they think they are.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Yeah, answer. And thank you.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you so much for joining today. We really enjoyed the conversation and learned a lot from you today.
Thanks for having me. I really had a great conversation.